Hello and welcome to another episode of Open Studio. I'm your host Martina Flora, and in this show I have honest conversations with artists, designers and creatives to uncover their story and the specific tactics they use to build a successful career around their skills and the work they love doing. This is a special in-between episodes which serves as a recap of the episodes from the last month. It features a short clip of each conversation in one place so that you can jump around and get a feel for both the episode and the guest. And then you can always dig deeper by going into one of those episodes. For the full list of the guests featured today, see the episode description below, right below where you press play in your podcast app. Or as usual, you can head to martinaflor.com/podcast and find all the details there. Please enjoy.
Episode 71, Thandiwe Muriu. Mentorship and why you need it. How to develop a strong style. Gaining and keeping clients. Insights on the world of fine art and how to know if your art is good enough.
And I think you were so fortunate to have this role of a mentor, because even though for those that got formal education and went through all the technical details and all the technical knowledge, when they get into the actual business of making money with their art and their skills, they struggle because they don't know the deeds of like making a living with their art or their skills, right? And I was wondering how did you get to know this mentor? Because I know that there's a lot of artists out there looking for this person, but how do you get to connect with someone who is already in the industry, and you also get them to tell you all of this stuff, which is is such a precious information, and many of them don't want to share it because otherwise you become their competition. I know that many artists and many designers and professionals out there think this way. So I was wondering how did that work out for you?
I think I need to begin by saying mentorship and looking for mentors was a principle that I was taught growing up. And so it was very natural for me to reach out to somebody and say, hi, I want to know more about this topic. Could I meet with you? Because I was taught you need mentors for everything, whether it's your personal life, you should have mentors as a creative around business and just how to run a business. And they don't necessarily have to be in the creative industry, because there's a level of business that's just business.
Yeah.
And then have mentors around creativity and things like, how do I do personal projects? How do I continue to grow as an artist? So I always had mentors for every different part of my life.
Yeah.
So when I got into photography, he initially reached out to me on I think it was Facebook or Instagram. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'd love to meet you, because this guy was like my icon for Kenyan photography.
That's the
But
dream.
even before then, I had been approaching other people. So because I knew I was really interested in how do you make money in photography? And then how can I work as a photographer? But I know I don't want to shoot weddings. I know I don't want to do family pictures. I want to create things. And the closest thing I can think to in terms of creation is commercial photography. And so I began to talk to other people around commercial photography, which means you could be talking to art directors, producers. So they weren't necessarily only photographers. And I would just write them an email or a text message and say, hi, my name is Thandiwe. I'm an up-and-coming photographer, and I had some questions about the Kenyan photography industry. Please, could I take you for coffee at your convenience and ask some questions? Some don't respond, some do, but you only need a few to respond. And then because I was such a broke teenager, I would save all my pocket money to take them out for this one coffee. But I'd come away with a wealth of information that really helped. So a level of it is just courage. Identify people who are ahead of you or where you want to be, and then reach out to them. And if they don't respond, then just look for somebody a level down. So maybe I wrote a photographer who is 10 years ahead in my journey. Let me try somebody who's 5 years ahead, because they still know more than I know now. And then I think just, just saying clearly, I need help. I don't know if it's very unusual, but we don't have the habit of writing to somebody and just saying, I need help. I would love some wisdom from you. Maybe it's very humbling, but it works. If you just say, I would love to learn from your experiences, most people won't refuse.
I love that because it's such a simple strategy. Oftentimes, it's just about sending an email and reaching out to that person, and perhaps the person will say, yes, let's meet. And it seems such a hard thing to do for many of us, right? Especially for artists. I have through the experience of working with many artists in my coaching programs and in my courses and stuff, I have come to realize that many of us fall in the category of introverts. So the people skills of like going out there and making conversation or starting a conversation with someone is already very intimidating. So I think by having you sharing this simple strategy is so encouraging because it's just about sending a message and trying out your luck. Perhaps it will say yes, and it's just about having a coffee with that person.
I mean, and I totally feel when you say we're introverts. So it may sound like I went and sent 10 emails a day. No, sometimes I could only send one a month because I just had such imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
But as long as you send something, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
And it gets easier. Or have a friend write the template for you. I found sometimes it's really hard to write out emails like that. And so I will talk and say what I'm trying to say and have a friend type it out. And there, it's done.
I love that. And tell me a little bit about, because you mentioned that, you had this mentor of yours that really introduced you to the world of commercial photography. So how was your path into making a living as a photographer? Because I can imagine that at some point you're starting looking for your own clients and, putting yourself out there, trying to find your own opportunities as a photographer, right? So how were those first steps? What were the things and the strategies that you used to kind of gain more clients and build a client base?
I think the first really important thing to say is it takes time. I mean, I had the privilege of beginning really early. By 17, I had registered my business and I was trying to operate as a photographer.
Wow.
But I only started seeing my real clients, later on, 5 years, almost 10 years later on. But it takes time. Yeah. And part of that maybe is just getting experience, learning how the industry works, making networks. So time is a factor I can't take credit for. Yeah. But beyond that, there's always several things I knew and I was committed to. Number one, I would always say to my assistant, I sell an experience whose byproduct is pictures. Because photography is such an intimate experience. If I'm shooting portraits, if I'm shooting a wedding, even if I'm shooting an advert, you're capturing somebody and interacting in such an uncomfortable situation with them. It's hard to be in front of the camera. Many people remember how they felt in front of the camera before they remember the picture.
Yeah.
And so my big focus was always, how do people feel in front of my lens? And one of the exercises I would do with myself or with my assistant was having our pictures taken and realizing, for example, if you don't tell people what to do with their hands, it's really awkward. Even I wonder today, what do I do with my hands? Are they okay? And so focusing on how people feel was really important. Yeah. And then there's basic principles, delivering on time, which I didn't always do, but trying very hard to provide a good quality of service because it's amazing how many people are brilliant at what they do, but the attitude with which they do it or just basic things don't come through. And if you hit the basics, you're already on a home run, I think.
Yeah.
The rest is just, additions. I think one of the other strategies I used was, and this took time to build, but not being afraid to tell people what I do. So initially when I started as a photographer, I would be like, hi, my name is Thandiwe. I'm a photographer, And over time I realized you need to be proud of what you do. And part of
Yeah.
that was my experience here. It's not viewed as a real profession. It
Mm.
was kind of like, okay, she must have failed at being a doctor, lawyer, engineer. So I guess this is her plan, like F. So she's a photographer now.
Yeah.
But being like, hi, I'm a photographer. This is what I do, um, can help so that people think of you when they think, I need a photographer. Who did I meet? Oh, yeah, there was this lady called Thandiwe.
Mm.
I think beyond that is good branding. And it's in the simple things. So, for example, after I've told you I'm a photographer, is there somewhere you can go to see my work? Because yes, I can show it to you on my phone, but will you remember?
Yeah.
Maybe I have a really difficult name on Instagram. So I need some place for you to be able to go and see my work. So have a business card or, a QR code at this point, and have a place people can go and enjoy viewing your work. And it should be a good user experience.
Yeah.
So have you ever been on a website and it is so frustrating to use?
Oh, yeah.
And so even if the work is good, I'm just kind of like, I can't take any more of this. I'm closing the tab. you know? So make it easy for people to find your contact information, to look at your work, to follow up about it, have an email address that works. Basic things like that make such a huge difference. At least in my context, they did. Make such a huge difference. Just be easy for clients to find. And then I think beyond that, one of my strategies was having unique work. And if you're a creative, your work is already unique. Half the time, the problem, at least for me, was finding the confidence to show the unique style of my work and realizing that I don't have to be a photocopy of everybody else. But if I want colorful work, that's fine. I'll just attract clients who like colorful work.
Yeah.
So a client who deals, so maybe a law firm will never hire Thandiwe to do any work for them because my work is almost too playful, too colorful. But a soft drink company might be like, oh my gosh, your work is just perfect for our target audience.
Yeah.
You'll just attract the clients that are attracted to your style. So don't be afraid to have a style because there's enough clients to go around. Somebody else is thriving photographing all the lawyers and there's enough to go around.
Episode 73, Timothy Goodman, Finding a Dream Job, Writing a Book, and Relocating Cities.
I want to fast forward a couple of years and understand, how did you go freelance? How did you, how did you decided to go freelance? What happened in between? If we can just quickly touch on that. And what was the process of starting freelance, and what was also the motivation behind it? What motivated you to say like, hey, I just want to go on my own and I want to start my own business?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I graduated SVA and I became a book jacket designer for Simon and Schuster, and who's also now publishing my graphic memoir that'll be out in January.
Seriously,
So
it's great.
Yeah, it's
so good.
So
Connections are everything.
So I was a book jacket designer there, and I was making no money, and I lived an hour away in Brooklyn, and it was it was exciting in a lot of ways. It was like for me, all my favorite designers when I was in college were like people who did book jackets, who did these kind of like magazine covers and things like that. And so it felt like there was a novelty to it that was special to me. I spent a year doing book jackets. My art director, John Fulbrook, who when I was working for Simon & Schuster, he left and went to work in branding for a man named Brian Collins, who has a firm called Collins. And he took me with him. So suddenly I was in this whole new world of branding and working on big brand identities and all this. And I was only, not even, I think I was like, it wasn't even a year. It was like 8 or 9 months after I graduated. So suddenly I was in this world and there was a lot of pressure and we worked insane hours and I had to learn certain kinds of programs very quickly. And I just worked day and night for this man. And it was enthralling. It was just so thrilling for me as such a young designer. And that's all I wanted, I just kind of devoted my whole life to create. And so I worked for him for 2 years. And then I got a job opportunity to go to California and work for Apple. And I was only, a couple years, 3 years, 2.5 years out of school. And I went to California. I lived in San Francisco. I worked for Apple in Cupertino. and I did not like it at all. It There were amazing people that I met at Apple. It just wasn't the right place for me.
Yeah.
So
In which
it
way? Can I ask in which
yeah,
way?
it was just very corporate, you know. I didn't want to. So I also did my first mural at this moment.
Ah, really? So
Okay, so
in Apple or like in the offices or what?
no, not for
Just
Apple. I did it
okay.
just freelance.
Okay.
I did my first mural. I did it for free. I know we're not supposed to do we're not supposed to, talk about doing things for free, but I did it for free because I really felt like it was a great opportunity to do something like that. And I had never felt so much doing this mural. I felt mentally, emotionally, physically, like stimulated. It was so everything just connected when I
Tell
did
me
this
more
mural.
about this mural. I'm not
Yeah,
letting you go without telling me more about this mural.
I
What
it was a
was it?
weird.
How did you find it, or
Yeah,
who approached you with that?
it happened so quickly. I won a Young Guns award. You know Young Guns, the
Oh
Art
yeah,
Directors
yeah.
Club. Yeah. So I was only 3 years out of school, and I
So
was
for
working
those
for.
that don't know, for those listeners that don't know, the Youngans Award is an award that is um, that how will you explain that actually awards the vanguard
It's
of
for
artists
it's
under 30,
Yeah, 30. Yeah, under
right?
30, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So I won a Young Guns award. I don't even know how it was a wild thing that I won it, and at some point they had an open call for Ace Hotel is a hotel here in in America in the United States, and they wanted someone to do a mural in one of the rooms.
yeah.
And they contacted the Young Guns, and someone there, I think, gave them a couple different names. And they reached out to me and they said, "What would you do if you wanted to do a mural?" I got really excited. I did this whole sketch
Yeah.
and they loved it. And then I went and did it. And I locked myself in this room for 3 days. And I did this mural with a paint marker. I didn't know why I picked a paint marker. It just felt like
And you stick to
uh,
it forever, essentially,
I
or
know.
not?
Now I have whole jars of paint markers.
Yes.
Um, uh, but I didn't know why I picked the paint marker. I just felt like easy, you know. I just felt like,
Yeah.
well, I don't know how to do a mural. I'll just draw with this marker. It's thick. It's like okay. But it took me 3 days to do this mural. Something now that would take me maybe 6 hours.
Yeah.
And I was crying doing this mural. Like I didn't know if it was good. I felt just so overwhelmed, but I couldn't stop. I just felt like I don't know. When I finished the mural, I just felt like this feeling that was just came over me that was so overwhelming that how I asked myself a question. I said, I feel so stimulated doing this mural. I feel like I've really, for the first time, created something that's inherently me, you know, and the way I see the world and and it was editorial, like kind of the work. And I said, well, I love this feeling right now. How do I find this feeling for the rest of my life?
Yeah. I
Is
want
that
more.
possible? Yeah. So, but then I took this job to go to Apple. So then I was working in Apple and I was not, Apple's Apple. I could get my teeth fixed and my mom could tell her friends what I do for a living finally. And, I would get a little stock and all these things, but I was just like, why am I here? This
Yeah.
doesn't feel right. And I was running home every day to do freelance work. I started trying to get freelance work. I was doing book jackets. I was doing illustrations for magazines, New York Times. Like I was trying to find all this free. I was doing anything I could to get my voice out in the world. That was the most important thing to me as a young designer. I just wanted to find my voice and project my voice into the world through my art any way I could, through any medium. And I was doing all of this while I was working at Apple, and and it was just constant kind of like battle and struggle internally. And eventually, after 15 months there, I realized that I could at least pay my rent with the freelance I was making. And so I decided that was enough for me to take, and I was saving my money I didn't spend my money on anything. From the time I started working in book jackets, when I was making $20,000 a year and I had to share a bedroom with my best friend in Brooklyn, deep in Brooklyn, Crown Heights, I was saving my money all the way to Apple. I never bought furniture. I never went on a trip. I didn't do anything. Because I was waiting for this moment to put. I just knew at some point while I was in branding and at Apple, I realized this is not for me. Like, if I can have any say in this, if I can really go after this, I'm going to try, because I know I'm not this kind of a designer. I'm not a person who wants to make brand identities and talk about art direction and all these things. It just felt like there was something else calling me,
Yeah.
and I wasn't looking down on any of that, like it wasn't about a judgment. It was just, for me, I knew it didn't feel right. So I quit. I realized I could pay my rent, and I quit my job at Apple, and I got the hell out of San Francisco because I didn't like San Francisco either.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel like it didn't feel culturally the right place for me. It didn't feel like they really, it's a tech place. It's not for it wasn't for artists, for me, the way I saw it,
Yeah.
and I missed New York terribly, and I got back here, and I'm started, and that was 10 years ago.
Episode 75, Verònica Fuerte from Hey Studio. Being a woman in a male-dominated industry, client outreach, using personal projects to stand out in the crowd, and growing and managing a team.
You keep on maintaining these social media channels of yours and this platform, but you must continue, or I can imagine that you continue reaching out to clients and trying to expand your client base. How does this look like for you?
Yes, I think we continue showing it on website, social media, all these kind of channels, but also I give a lot of talks, conferences, and I think it's important to be connected in many ways, just people, creative people, and also connected in your city, in what is happening in your city, people, entrepreneurs, new things. Being active.
Yeah.
I mean, staying at home is not going to work. I mean, you need to be active. Yeah. So
Totally.
it's a lot of work as well. To lead a studio is not just, okay, I'm staying here, waiting for an email to come. No, you need to work on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think this is also part of your entrepreneurial spirit that you grew up with, because also besides the work that you do for clients, you also run your own personal projects, right? And I want to mention the online shop, but also I want to touch on how the online shop has now expanded into a retail store. And this is quite an undertaking, right? To start a physical store, it has other complexities. So I want to first touch on how the online shop started. What were the motivations behind it? Because I know that you have a strong position around creating personal work, and how this really brings your, or how this really helps you stand out in the crowd, or at least it has helped Hey Studio stand out in the crowd of other creative studios, the personal work that you put out there and your online shop. So I want to hear a little bit about this, the journey that you had with the online shop, and how did this all started?
Yes. I always say that the online shop started the first day of Hey in 2007. Yes, because I started doing side projects because I didn't have clients.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, let's do work, because as a creative, we can do whatever we want. It's not necessary to have machines, just a computer and our creativity. So I started to work on personal project, illustrations, graphics, a lot of things, trying to find the style. So when we had spare time, we focused on doing personal projects since the beginning of the studio.
Yeah.
And all these projects were on a website or Flickr, without anything else, just showing it.
Yeah.
And through the years, like people started to send us emails asking for these graphics
Yeah.
to buy, and I said it's not for sale. It's just there. And after like receiving like some emails, I said, okay, maybe there's something here. Like
Yeah.
that's the reason. I mean, there wasn't something I wasn't prepared for that. And I said, okay, maybe people ask for that, so maybe we can do a shop and print posters. Of course, my first idea was posters because as a graphic designer, print is my like first idea.
Totally.
Yes, I love posters, of course. I'm a designer, and I said, okay, let's do posters. And it was a lot of work because I needed to find the supplier, the paper, the machine, how we're going to print, a lot of work.
Yeah.
The delivery is a lot of things. And after like 3-4 years of the online store, I said, okay, what I started like doing posters, maybe these posters can be a blanket or a scarf or nothing. It's not necessary to be a paper. So we started like to look on providers, things, a lot of work as well. But yes, it's exciting.
Yeah.
And also through these years, people came to the studio from all over the world. Like, okay, they sent us emails like, can I go and visit the studio? And also I want to buy your things, okay, because everything was in our studio. And I said, yes, you can come. Of course, it was like a studio visit / shop in our studio. And of course we were working, like trying to do everything. And one day I said, okay, so maybe it's because there was people asking for that. And I said, maybe it's okay to make a store. Like, because people is coming to the studio and we are working. I mean, it's not a place to, because every time, like every summer or spring, a lot of people came. And then I said, okay, I have friends, like they have stores, clothes stores, others. And I started like to ask, and I rent a place near my home.
Yeah.
And yes, and after everything is like very nice, lovely, and very detailed. Like it's not just a store; it's a place that you can drink very nice coffee, specialty coffee, that you can read vintage books. With the workshops, it's an inspiration place. And after like 6 months, like COVID came, so it was also very I don't know how to say it, for me, like very, very difficult to survive, but I couldn't make it. And now we are going like to do a lot of things, events, and yeah. But yes, it's something like grew up organically.
Yeah. And I wonder, because it's really interesting how the entire journey was. Like, it seems that you took information or feedback from your own audience to take every step of, every step that you took throughout this project. So it seems that because people were requesting prints from they were asking you, hey, where can I buy this? You started your online shop, and then came the moment where, people asked to pass by your studio space to just buy some of your prints. And then you decided, because you got this feedback from your audience, you decided to take on the next stage, which is opening a retail store. And I think that's such a valuable learning from that experience, like to hear your audience and what they want and what they need, and react to that instead of like using the opposite process, like just putting something out there and hoping that the people will want to have it. I think your process was really organic in that sense, that you heard your audience and then you created something to comply with their request. So this is it. I hope you loved this episode. You can find me, the host of the show, on social networks at Martina Flor on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. If you have a question or comments, go to martinaflor.com/podcast, where you can see previous episodes, find show notes, and send voice memos with your comments and questions. You can also watch these episodes on YouTube. Just go to martinaflor.com/YouTube to find them. You can, of course, listen to all our episodes on your favorite podcast platform. If you loved this episode, subscribe to this podcast. And if you leave us a review, it will help others find us. Thank you all for listening, and see you in the next episode of Martina Flore's Open Studio. Bye-bye.